Good morning, good morning. I hope you guys are having a fantastic start to your Friday and super pumped to be chatting about this today because my mind has literally been here this week and it's so important to talk about this. We are all so human. And it's frustrating because we all have that ego survival mind. And when that ego survival mind kind of takes hold, it's that negative Nelly voice, it's the monkey mind. You know, there's so many different names that we can call it. But I know for certain that we've all experienced it. And we've all experienced it because it's part of being human. But knowing how to navigate beyond that, to get back into your heart, to get back into that state of flow, to feel good within yourself, is so important. And I know for me, I get extremely frustrated when I get in that negative mindset, and there's a few things that cause that, and that's what I want to talk about today as well. Hey Suzanne, great to have you on, honey. Hey Becca Steele, it's good to see you. Hey Kylie, lovely to have you guys on. So definitely, you know, this is the key thing that I'm really wanting to talk about because there's a couple of really key distinctions, and particularly for women around this as well. Thank you for the love. Always love getting love. Hey Pete, great to have you on this morning as well. And you know, like I was saying, this can derail us in so many different areas of life. And I actually went into the gym yesterday, and it was like I was really in that push where it was like I was forcing myself almost. And I talk a lot about this because this actually creates adrenal burnout, and I don't like to operate from that place at all. If possible, sometimes it does take a little bit of discipline, or sometimes we've got like a bit of fear or a bit of resistance around stuff as well. Hey Paul, great to have you on this morning, which really can be challenging. So but when we operate from that push mode all of the time, like forcing ourselves, like I have to get this done or I need to do this, it really does start to create more of this ongoing cycle as well. It creates a lot of tension in the body, generally makes us feel pretty unwell. It impacts the immune system. It definitely reduces our emotional resilience and our ability to be able to have emotionally intelligent conversations. And by that I mean it's just not like fly off the handle, which is pretty important. You know, it's like when we see a loved one, we want to feel like we can be engaged with them, that we can listen to what it is that they've got to say and things like that. When we don't feel great, it really can impact on all of those relationships. Not only that, but productivity, clarity of mind, being able to focus, being able to get done what we want to get done, but in a happy and joyful way. And at the end of the day, you know, hey Chris, great to have you on. Hey Lisa, great to have you on, hun. At the end of the day, you know, like we all, regardless of what we're doing, we all want to feel good. Like we're all very human in that sense as well, where it's like we really just want to be able to feel good. We want to be able to feel successful in life, whatever target or whatever success means for us. Of course, that's very individual, same as what happiness is. It's all very individual. But there's some really great keys to overcoming this negative mindset and how to move beyond that as well. And one thing that I know for certain is that if I am physically tired, if I am physically exhausted, it triggers my ego survival mind. The reason for that is our ego survival mind is there to protect us. It wants to keep us alive. It wants to keep us safe. So, but it's fear-based. And like if you've been following me for a while, you'll know that I speak a lot about this simply because knowing your ego survival mind as a separate identity to who you actually really are, because you're not angry, you're not, you might experience those feelings for sure, but it's actually not like who you actually are at your core level. And I think it's a really important distinction because when we've felt a particular way for such a long time, we actually start to associate our identity with that. I am depressed, or I am sad, or I am just an anxious person, or I am shy, like all of those different things. And they're just feelings, but we can tend to take ownership of them. And when we attach it to our identity, that's when we kind of can get a little bit stuck with it as well. Or I'm just a negative person, or I'm not a confident person. Like there's all sorts of different ways, obviously, that this can kind of come through. And we start to own it as if it's actually the real us. And none of that is actually the real you. We've got certain layers around this. Hey Donna, great to have you on. We've got definite layers around this. And without going too much into this, but it's helpful to understand it. is, of course, when we're born, we have our real self. So we've got like this nucleus, which is the real self. And then we're interacting with the world right from the get-go, right? And we're trying to, so our ego survival mind, it wants to keep us safe. It wants to keep us accepted by our tribe or by our family, by our community, because our very survival depends on it. So we're hardwired to listen to our ego survival mind. Hey, Lisa, great to have you on, honey. And so we have like this real self that's born. And so we're interacting with the world, and if we cry too loud and somebody shouts at us, we're instantly going to take that as feedback and go, oh, I shouldn't do that because it threatens my survival. Suddenly I've had love withdrawn, or I've had somebody get angry at me, and it doesn't feel good. So we're starting to interact with the world. We're trying to figure out who we are and who we need to be in order to be loved and accepted. Now, this is where the ego survival mind really starts to kind of get a little bit wound up, because so we've got our real self. And then when something like that happens, it creates a devalued self. So it's like, oh, when I'm too loud, I'm unworthy of love, or I'm not acceptable, or anything else. Thank you so much, Suzanne. And it's so true, isn't it? The fear versus love. Like when we're in our heart, we're feeling amazing, feeling great. And the ego mind is that fear base as well. And it's there for a reason, for other reasons as well. But so we're talking, obviously, you know, the real self. Then there's the devalued self, so it receives the impact of somebody else's expression or somebody else's bad mood, and it's like, and we can interpret, you know, obviously the emotional intelligence of a 2-year-old or an 18-month-year-old or even a 4-year-old is much less than our perception as an adult. So we're taking all these things, but only with very, very limited perception and emotional ability to be able to know what that actually means. So a parent could be totally stressed out. It could have nothing to do with us as a child. We walk through the kitchen singing or having a great time, and then the parent lashes out. And you know, if you're a parent, you've probably done that. I've done that, you know, certainly not intentionally, and I'm much better at that these days because I've done so much emotional work on myself. But certainly years ago I was incredibly reactive as a parent, which I didn't like about myself. Beat myself up, blah blah blah. So again, we've got the real self, we've got the devalued self, and so in order to compensate for this devalued self, we form this inner critic, and this is what becomes like the ego survival mind. This is what becomes that negative Nelly. This is what becomes that voice that's like, you're not good enough, you're this, you're that, you need to be more perfect, you just need to learn more, you need to be better, you need to be thinner, be prettier, be smarter, be more intelligent. It's all of that. And so this inner critic gets like, literally, it's in our head, and it's like this screaming voice, this berating voice, this critical voice. Hey Stacey, great to have you on, hun. That, you know, can be really detrimental to our self-worth, to our well-being, to all of these different things. But in actual fact, we don't create against ourselves. Now that might sound strange to say, we've got this voice in our head that's beating us up, but it's actually there because it's wanting to protect us. It's like, oh, you can't be this way, you can't be that way, you've got to be more perfect, because otherwise the outside world, the external world, hey Heather, great to have you on, is going to reject you, is going to hate you, is not going to accept you. And for our ego survival mind, that's incredibly threatening, because we're here to survive, right? Like our physical body wants to survive. If you're standing on the edge of a cliff, you know you don't want to move too close, because you know that feels scary. We have an innate you know, hardwired to save our physical body, or to keep our physical body safe. Hey Jan, great to have you on. So we've got like this inner critic, and then we create from that then this a false self, and this is the ideal self that needs to be this particular way. So we create this vision of this perfect person in our head, and we're constantly striving to be that. And that's where then the comparison, the ego mind jumps in and goes, well, you're not that yet, so you're not worthy of love, or you're not that yet, so you don't deserve great financial success, or you're not that yet, you don't deserve a loving relationship. All of this stuff, and none of it is actually true. It's just the ego mind's way of trying to protect you, trying to keep you safe, trying to get you to fit in. And we create all these layers, we create all these identities, we create all these mechanisms and protection behaviors like self-sabotage. Like I've experienced like loads of stuff around all of that, where it's like even the other week, you know, my inner critic had created this guilt and shame around my financial success to try and dull things down, to try and bring things back down as a way of actually protecting me, because I had a deeper fear about being in intimate relationship, and that was from a lot of past trauma and stuff that had actually happened. And all of that then ties in, and we all have those blind spots as well, where it's really difficult sometimes to navigate through that without actually having somebody not to guide you, because nobody else has got your answers, but to help you get clear on who you are and what's really important to you, and to like pull back all the layers and all these shells and everything else. Hey Denise, great to have you on, honey. Because we all get like so caught up in this fear that can present in the fear of being rejected, in the fear of not being accepted. It can really paralyze us from not taking the action that we actually need to, whether that's in our business, whether that's in our life, whether that's actually speaking up for ourselves. I know I had massive blocks around that, still working through that at the moment, because it can feel really, really confronting sometimes. Like, and if you've had a past experience where you've spoken up for yourself and then been berated as a result of that, or had a really set of negative consequences as a result of that, that's going to be really scary for you as well. Hey Jennifer, and it takes a lot to actually move beyond that, to step into our full empowerment and go, hang on a second, this is actually not resourceful at all. This is not bringing me closer to what I want. Maybe it's keeping me safe. Maybe it's keeping me certain. And that's what the ego survival mind is constantly looking for. So I really wanted to explain like the ego survival mind mechanism, simply so that you've got greater awareness around when that's acting out, and you'll know when that's acting out, because and Brene Brown's done some amazing work on this in the area of shame. And at the depth of it all, I really think, one of the hardest emotions to feel as a human is this feeling of shame. And there's a difference between guilt and shame. And guilt is, I did the wrong thing. And shame is, I am wrong. So again, it's like attaching those feelings to our identity and making ourselves be that particular way. So it's like, I am shameful, or I'm humiliated, or I'm embarrassed, or I need to withdraw from the world. And that's the thing that the ego survival mind will always want us to do, is generally withdraw from the world, because we don't feel safe. Hey Lauren, great to have you on. Hey Bruce. And that's where, things can get really, really tricky, because we'll either be like overly defensive, we'll be justifying, we'll either be critical either of ourselves or of others, we'll be particularly judgmental. So when your ego survival mind is active is when that judgment comes in. It's like where we're judging others, or we're blaming others, criticizing others. All of that is mechanisms of the ego survival mind trying to protect itself. It's like scared, it's freaking out about something, it wants to be accepted, it wants to be loved, it wants to know that it's enough. And the thing with it, when we're stuck in that ego survival mind identity, is that because it's fear-based, it's never actually going to feel enough. So if you're constantly living in that ego survival mind, you may be running a story, I always feel like I'm not enough. And I know for me, I ran that story for a long time. And it wasn't until I went to a Tony Robbins event where it was like, oh, right, every human actually feels like this, either at times, or they've felt like it for a long time as well, if they've been in their ego survival mind. Now, the biggest trigger for this, like I said at the start, is physical exhaustion. If you are in adrenal burnout, so you have been living in a state of fight, flight for such a long time, this is going to be super challenging for you as well. I know for me, when I'm physically exhausted, or particularly like around my menstrual cycle, sorry for any of the men on here, but sorry, but not sorry, it's a really important factor for women. And it really can play out in a negative way. I know for me, the day before my cycle, I get incredibly anxious, and there's no other explanation apart from like my hormonal change or my hormonal shift actually occurring. Like, I'll just feel overly anxious. My ego survival mind will kick in. Years ago, like, I used to beat myself up, or I'd buy into all of that. But now, because I've got greater self-awareness around this, and women, if you aren't tracking your cycle, perhaps that could be something that's really beneficial for you as well, because the less that we can buy into that ego survival mind story, the more that you free yourself, and you can go, yeah, I'm just feeling anxious. Okay, it's just like, you can put things in perspective as opposed to go down the rabbit hole. I don't know about you guys, but I've certainly disappeared down the rabbit hole before. Hey Elizabeth, great to have you on. And that can be really, really challenging. So when you've got that greater awareness and you're starting to know yourself a little bit better, you know, what situations trigger you. I know for me, I did a self-defense course like a couple of weeks ago, massive triggers, like totally put me back into ego survival mode. So much so that I was waking up at like 2 and 3 a.m. again in the morning, which was a pattern for me in the past, of like a huge anxiety pattern. Hey Jerry, great to have you on. So when you know yourself like really, really well, and you know how to reset your autonomic nervous system. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of tips around this as well, because the more that we can kind of slow things down, and it's when we're in that ego survival mind, when we're in that fight flight response, like it's go, 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 got to get everything done, the pressure's mounting, I'm not enough if I don't get it done, I have to, I need to, I should. And then we've got like all of that mental stuff going on, like we're judging ourselves or judging others or criticizing or blaming or worrying. Like worrying is a huge sign of the ego survival mind. We've just bought into a story, and we're actually starting to attract more and more of that situation to us as well. And fears are self-generating, and even if it's not the actual truth of what's going on. So I used to have huge fears around being accepted, being loved, and so I'd ring a friend, and if they didn't want to hang out, or they didn't have like, in my mind it was because they didn't want to hang out with me, or because they didn't like me, or because I wasn't good enough, or like all this story. It was just because they were busy. But our perception can change things so quickly, and I'm sure you guys can all, you know, remember a time where like you've really taken something personally where it wasn't actually what somebody intended or what somebody meant at all, and then we can get extra defensive or blame or get extra angry. I was like hyper sensitive to anything anybody would say to me because I didn't have that strong foundation of love, and self-love is the greatest way to move from this. But look, let's jump back to the autonomic nervous system. So sympathetic is when we go, go, go. It's when we're in that fight flight. It's like when we've got lots of stuff on. Sometimes people literally wake up in that state, and it's like right from the get-go, oh my God, now I'm late, now I've got to push, now I've got to run, now I've got to get the kids ready, now I've got to do lunches. Like there's all that heightened stress, and you get in the car, and then like you're in a bad mood, you've spilt the coffee, like and it just seems to snowball from there. And then the ego mind, you know, it's running like all of those grocery lists or all the things that need to be done, and it's truly, truly exhausting. So how to switch from your autonomic nervous system back to your sympathetic, back to your parasympathetic, which is, I can relax, I can digest my food, I can regenerate. Like this is what the body is actually saying. Your body is not interested in digesting food if it's being chased by the tiger. It's like, I couldn't care less about breakfast if I've got to escape the tiger. So talking obviously back in caveman days, but that's like literally like that's the stress response that's actually coming up in our body. It doesn't know the difference between believing that we're actually running late, or believing that, you know, we've got way too much to do, and actually a physical stress of trying to keep us safe. So, and this is where cortisol can really compound in the body. It makes us, you know, we all need cortisol, but if our cortisol levels are too high, it'll be harder to lose weight, our memory will be less, you might end up with that brain fog, all of those things happening. Hey Dawn, great to have you on. And so to do that, like breathing is like one of the fastest ways that we can actually start to regulate our system again. And you know, you might have heard of breathing, mindfulness, all of that. If you are not practicing this consistently though, I can promise you, you're missing out on huge, extraordinary benefits. Our body needs to be oxygenated. If you are tired, if you are exhausted, body doesn't need more caffeine. It's a good reminder for me as well. It actually needs more oxygen and more water majority of the time. This can reduce sugar cravings. It like honestly resets the nervous system as well, simply because you're like, when you're in that heightened state, that fight flight state, your breathing will be more rapid, it'll be quite shallow, and you're sending biochemical feedback to your to your chemistry all the time. So there's that literally like your pituitary gland and your hypothalamus is like getting all this feedback from all of the other body responses going, oh, we still need to produce more cortisol, or we still need to produce more adrenaline because we need to escape this thing. Whereas when you start to regulate your breathing, it's like, oh, okay, I can slow things down, I can rest. Now, there's also a great restorative yoga pose, which is just literally your legs up the wall. So you literally lay at 90 degrees to the wall, you have your back on the floor, your bottom as close to the edge of the wall as possible, or the architrave, and put your legs up the wall. You can also put a block underneath your pelvic bone and just slightly elevate your pelvis. Now, this also stimulates the nerves in the back, which actually allows the body to sink back into that parasympathetic nervous system as well. Even 5 minutes in that position is so helpful for your mind. It'll help to slow things down, and it'll help to reset things at a greater level as well. Hey Deb, hey Sal, great to have you on. So the restorative yoga poses are absolutely brilliant. I also like to take my legs over my head as well. It actually is a really good squeeze for the stomach. It does a really good detox and also squeezes the liver, so it helps to cleanse the liver out, simply because like all of that's compacted. So in that same position, so you have your legs up the wall, then you just take your legs over your head. It also stimulates the thyroid gland. So if you're exhausted, if you're burnt out, I can promise you your thyroid will also be being impacted as well. So it stimulates the thyroid gland. There's so many benefits for just doing those two simple poses. It's something I like to do in my morning routine, or if I don't do it in my morning routine, I might do it at lunch or in the afternoon. If I feel myself getting a bit worked up or getting a little bit antsy, buying into that negative mind, it really will help to slow things down. Another question that you can ask yourself when you notice that your mind is going off track, that you're worrying about things, that you're caught in that negative mind or that negative loop, what you can actually do is just ask yourself, what do I want instead? So often we get so hooked into focusing on, oh, this is going wrong, that's going wrong, and we're like buying into that, and then we're living it as if it's actually really happening now. We're off in the future, or we're thinking about a past event, and we're buying into the stress of it, we're buying into the emotion of it. So simply by taking some big deep breaths, by resetting our autonomic nervous system, and then by asking ourselves a quality question, which is, what do I want instead? And even if it is, I want to feel calmer, I want to feel like, it doesn't have to be, the world's greatest goal or anything like that. It doesn't have to be anything way out there. It's just the next best feeling thought. I just want to feel a little bit calmer. I'm looking forward to feeling a little bit calmer. I'm looking forward to feeling that I've got more energy in my body. And in that moment, you're starting to move towards the solution rather than continue to focus on the problem. Quite often, and if you're a client of mine, you would have heard me say this over and over, which is like when you're saying to yourself, I don't want to think of the blue shoe, I don't want to think of the blue shoe, I don't want to think of the blue shoe, you're thinking of nothing else but the blue shoe. When you say to yourself, I'm going to think of the yellow sun, I'm going to think of the yellow sun, I'm going to think of the yellow sun, you're obviously not thinking about the blue shoe in that moment. So it's a really powerful way of just switching our focus. Whatever we're focused on is where our energy flows, and if we're focused on the solution, we'll tend to actually move more towards that solution. If you've ever been mountain biking, or you've ridden a motorbike, or you've ridden a push bike, like an exercise, well, generally not an exercise bike because they're generally stationary, but a push bike, like when you're out cycling or something like that, you know that wherever you're looking is where you're going to go. So if you're looking at the pothole going, oh my God, I don't want to miss the pothole, or I don't want to hit the pothole, you're gonna, like 9 times out of 10, you'll hit the pothole. I've, focused on like a tiny little pebble, and my road bike, my cycling bike is like, it's only got very thin tires. It's not a mountain bike, it's a road bike, and if I hit that little pebble, it can really throw you off track when you're riding. So, and I've done that, and I've certainly done the mountain biking as well, where it's like looking over the edge going, oh my God, I don't want to go over the edge, and the bike's going there. You've really got to like switch your thinking and bring your focus back to, what do I want to be focused on? Where am I going? What feels better for me right now? And it just needs to be a slightly softer thought, and a feeling of relief will also come in for you as well. Hey Vicky, great to have you on. So I hope that's been really helpful, guys. Sleep is imperative. Physical health and wellness is imperative. If you're finding your negative mind is really running away with you, I can promise you it'll be because you're physically exhausted, you're physically stressed. Doing whatever you can to get earlier nights. The pre-sleep before midnight is imperative for health and regeneration, much more so than the later sleep in the morning, just depending on your chronological body clock. There's a great book, The Power of When, which actually talks about the 4 different chronological times that people can kind of have. Some people really operate and function very well late at night. That is certainly not me. I am a lion. They've got like 4 different animals that describe each personality type or chronological body clock. So a lion is, wakes up super early. I'm normally up at 4 a.m. in the morning, but by 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, you're not going to get Buckley's from me. Whereas some people, they function much better if they're sleeping in until 8 or maybe 9 if they've got the luxury of doing that, and they'll keep going until 11, 12, 1 a.m. So knowing yourself, there's no right or wrong answers with any of this stuff. Again, it comes back to self-awareness. What works really well for me? When do I feel really good? When am I most productive? And when do I feel great in my body? You'll also have some things as well that you can do to bring you back to your heart center, which is just tapping into your reason why you want to do something. If you're feeling a lot of resistance around something, hey Clarissa, great to have you on. If you're feeling a lot of resistance around something, where you feel like, oh, I just have to get this thing done, ask yourself, well, why do I want to do this? Why is this super important to me? Why am I excited about doing this? Why am I choosing this? A lot of what actually impacts our adrenals and the negative mind is literally feeling like we have to, we need to, we should, or we must. When we ask ourselves, why do I choose to do this? That's a real quality question that can help you get back into your heart, have you feeling better than ever before, and get you back on track as well. So I hope that's been helpful, guys. Wishing you a fantastic rest of your day. Off to the gym shortly. Love my new program that I'm doing, and super excited about bringing lots of things into fruition, particularly setting ourselves up. I guess December for me is not necessarily a wind down time. It's a clarity, it's a celebration time, and getting clear on those next year's goals as well. So if you're in a situation where it's like, really want to make 2019 an amazing and incredible year, now is definitely the time to reach out. We can get some things in place for you as well, and have you moving forward in a super powerful way for 2019 as well. Always a great thing to have such clarity heading into the new year. Hey Courtney, great to have you on. Hey Joe, great to have you on. You guys might want to jump back and watch the replay. Really great info there, just in terms of overcoming that negative mind, taking great care of our physical health and well-being. A couple of quick resets that we can actually do to take ourselves out of that negative mind, back into our heart, and move forward in a powerful way. So have an amazing rest of your Friday, guys. Lots of love to you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Bye-bye.